It is night 2 of the NFL draft. We're about halfway through round 2, so that means it's time for me and Jared to jump in, talk to you about the offensive players that have gone so far in the NFL draft tonight. Jared, let's start with one of our favorite guys, one of our favorite receivers from this class, Elijah Moore. Finally got a landing spot. We kind of hoped he would go in round 1 to somebody, but instead he went early round 2 to the Jets. Not the best landing spot, but really one that could be just fine for his outlook, especially from a volume standpoint.
Yeah, not the best spot. I think that there are worse spots that we can talk about. There are guys still on the board, I think, that are going to probably have to drop down rankings because they're going to be third-round picks at this point. But, yeah, I mean, Elijah Moore gets early round 2 capital. That's nice. There's just a lot of unknowns with the Jets, I guess. New offensive coordinator that we don't know anything about, rookie quarterback. I think this probably spells the end of Jamison Crowder's time with the Jets. I was looking at his contract. He's set to count over $11 million against the cap this season. So I would guess the Jets just see Elijah Moore as his replacement. Really just a souped up Jamison Crowder, a guy who can get more vertical. So I think it's a fine landing spot. It doesn't really elevate him, but it's not going to sink him in my rankings either.
Yeah, and they've talked about Jamison Crowder as a cut candidate, so I think that this increases the chances of that. We'll see. I think it would hurt Jamison Crowder to get cut by a team, but I think he's the kind of guy who's going to get picked up by somebody else. So We'll see where he lands. I would still draft him where he's going because he's been going in value range. In our draft earlier today, went in round 16, so I don't think there's any real concern for Jamison Crowder right now. Next on the list of players, though, Javonte Williams. And I mean, if you're a Javonte Williams fan, this was kind of heartbreaking because the Falcons traded out of this spot to the Broncos to let the Broncos take Javonte Williams.
That's almost my bigger takeaway here, at least for 2021 redraft, is Atlanta had a chance to take this guy and they traded out of it. So, I don't know. We'll see. They're going to add something else to the backfield, I would assume. But I mean, Mike Davis might be their guy this season, and Mike Davis is capable. We saw it last year in Carolina, and he'd be in a better offense in Atlanta. So, he could be shooting up our rankings when we update them post-draft. But yeah, Javonte Williams, I think it's a fine long-term landing spot. I do think he's going to be sharing with Melvin Gordon this season. Gordon isn't costing Denver that much. They wouldn't really benefit from cutting him. So I think he's going to still be around. I think you're looking at a committee backfield. But Gordon is a free agent next offseason. I wouldn't expect Denver to re-sign him. So I think by 2022, Javonte Williams is the clear lead back in what really could be an awesome offense if Denver can, figure out the quarterback position.
All the Falcons got for this trade was a move from round 6 to round 4. So that tells me they didn't really care about Javonte Williams. It's certainly a boost for Mike Davis because at worst, he's going to be sharing with a 3rd-round pick now. So for Javonte Williams, we would have liked a better landing spot. But, the other side of that trade is the Broncos moved up. Even though they have Melvin Gordon, they signed Mike Boone. So they didn't need Javonte Williams. So that tells me they really like Javonte Williams. It's kind of like when they signed Melvin Gordon. It was like, do they really need Melvin Gordon? They have Royce Freeman. They have Phillip Lindsay. But, clearly they went and got what they liked. I think he leads the backfield in touches. But, yeah, Melvin Gordon's not going away. Mike Boone, obviously it's time to not be excited about Mike Boone, but they signed him. He's probably going to be on the team. So the touches get spread around some. Lowers the ceiling, but Javonte Williams is the upside guy there. We'll see where he goes. I think that we're probably looking at round 6 range, I would guess. And I don't know, that's fine if that's where he lands. Any earlier would probably be too early for me.
Yeah, and I think that's where about he was going, 5th, 6th round, a round or 2 behind Etienne and Najee Harris. I could see Javonte Williams leading that backfield in carries. I do think Melvin Gordon probably leads in targets, though. He's proven there, and Javonte Williams didn't do a ton of that in North Carolina. I think he's okay. I think he can develop, but I would expect Gordon to lead that backfield in targets this year.
Rondale Moore to the Cardinals with the 17th pick of round 2. So I think that, I think it's a better spot for Kyler Murray than it is for Rondale Moore because of all the guys that are there. But it's also probably a good spot for Rondale Moore to get some carries. He had 21 rushing attempts back in that big freshman season at Purdue, that made him a star and kind of kept him getting talked about even while he missed most of the past 2 seasons.
I like this fit a lot. I think Rondale Moore is going to be climbing my dynasty rankings here. Just landing with Cliff Kingsbury, like a creative offensive mind. You had Kadarius Toney, who I think is like a poor man's version of Rondale Moore, landing with Jason Garrett. I trust Cliff Kingsbury to maximize Rondale Moore a lot more than someone like Jason Garrett. So I like that. It's obviously crowded this season. Moore might finish 4th among wide receivers this year in targets with AJ Green. and Christian Kirk there along with DeAndre Hopkins. But Green and Kirk are free agents next offseason. So, by 2022, Rondale Moore could be the number 2 wide receiver there in Arizona.
That's a good point. And Green and Kirk are passable, pass-catching assets even this year. And by that, I mean able to be passed by somebody who proves that he deserves those targets.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Christian Kirk's just been a disappointment since they took him. I think this pick speaks to that because Rondale Moore is going to be a slot guy. That's what Kirk is. I think, they see more, even if maybe the replacement this year, but if nothing else in 2022.
Pat Freiermuth goes to the Steelers after Pittsburgh watched a whole bunch of offensive linemen go off the board. They get a guy who can block. He can also catch passes. Probably blocked as far as fantasy production goes, fantasy ceiling goes, at least this season by Eric Ebron being there. But I don't believe that Eric Ebron is signed beyond this season, so it's a solid landing spot.
Yeah, and I've heard Ebron mentioned as a cut candidate. I guess it was earlier this offseason. You're looking at his contract. They wouldn't gain a whole lot by cutting him. He's going to count $4.5 million against the cap this year. But then you're right. He is a free agent after this season, so he's probably gone after that. Freiermuth wasn't a guy I was excited about fantasy wise. Like he's just kind of a guy. I think probably going to be a better real life player because of the blocking ability. And I have just questions about that Steelers offense, beyond Big Ben at quarterback. So not a great landing spot. Not someone I'm going to be excited about in dynasty drafts. But
also an offense that's going to be changing most likely because Roethlisberger's probably heading into his final year. We'll see where the offense goes. They've got a new coordinator. So some uncertainty to deal with there. Freiermuth I wasn't excited about before, certainly not excited about now. I think ultimately it's not really a change for his outlook for me.
Agreed. Yep.
The last two were tiny receivers. First, Dwayne Eskridge to the Seahawks. The number 3 wide receiver in Seattle's offense last year was David Moore with 47 targets. The next wideout on the list was Freddie Swain with 21 targets. So that's the big problem for Dwayne Eskridge here. I think it's a fine landing spot if you didn't like Dwayne Eskridge. I think if you were hoping for big stuff for Dwayne Eskridge, then it's not a good spot for him.
Yeah, nice. I can just continue to fade him, which I planned on doing in Dynasty. And this pick makes no sense to me. I mean, one, I don't think Eskridge is worth a 2nd round pick. 2, you're Seattle. You supposedly want to start leaning back towards the run, and you already have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Metcalf signed through 2022. They're not letting him get away after that. He's theoretically signed beyond that. Tyler Lockett signed through 2025, and I'm sure they can get out of that before that, but. The pick makes no sense, and for Eskridge, I don't see a path within the next 2 or 3 years to fantasy relevance.
And even if you wanted a receiver, why would you not take like Terrace Marshall and have him and DK Metcalf and then Tyler Lockett in the slot? That sounds dangerous.
Yeah, Marshall was a guy I was kind of alluding to at the top that is dropping. I think it's because medical stuff, but his fall down the NFL draft is probably going to have to move him down the dynasty rankings.
Yeah, we'll see where he ultimately lands. The last one we'll talk about here is Tutu Atwell to the Rams. And I don't know. I don't honestly get it. What do you think of Tutu Atwell?
Yeah, same thing as Eskridge. Not a guy. It's the size. He's 149 pounds. Total outlier if he becomes a guy we can count on in fantasy. At least he's landing with Sean McVay, kind of like Cliff Kingsbury mold, a creative guy who can, probably will get Atwell the ball on, jet sweeps, end arounds, that type of stuff. But the Rams, too, have so few draft picks. Like, to spend this pick on that guy doesn't make much sense. But, Atwell, same with Eskridge. I'm just not a guy I'm going to be interested in Dynasty.
Yeah, he's 3 donuts away from being the size of a kicker. So I'm not at all interested in Tutu Atwell. Not only did they already have Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp in the fold, they drafted Van Jefferson last year. They signed Deshaun Jackson this offseason. So there's no immediate upside. The long-term upside is not attractive. It's a landing spot at least that makes me able to forget about Tutu Atwell as I was planning to do anyway.
I did hear someone on NFL Network, I think it was Peter Schrager, said that McVay views Atwell as like a young Deshaun Jackson, but he's Deshaun Jackson minus like 30 pounds. That's kind of the difference. So I don't see that. Maybe McVay, McVay does know more than I do. Maybe he's right, but we'll see.
Yes, that's certainly fair. But Deshaun Jackson's little brother is not a comp that you want to have.
Right.
All right, that's going to do it for now. We'll see what happens in the rest of round 2, round 3. We might be back at you later, but that's going to do it for now. Follow along in Shark Bites. Follow along on Twitter. We'll be around instantly reacting to these guys, and then, of course, longer-term reacting in the days to come. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of Friday night.